Hi everyone, hope you had a good day today. It's Friday, so it's weekend tomorrow, so you haven't got to do any homeschooling over the weekend. You can have a nice rest and be good and go out for lots of walks and stuff like that. So that'll be good, won't it? And on your walks you might get to see the great big bumblebee. That's today's story. So if you're sitting comfortably, then I will begin. One morning Louise was playing with her dolls in the nursery when her mother came in. "What are you playing at, darling?" she asked. "I'm playing at having a wedding with my dolls," said Louise. "But I haven't found any white frock nice enough to dress Angelina in, Mummy. She's the bride, you know." "Well, if you run upstairs to the attic and look in the big black trunk near the window, you'll find an old white frock of mine," said Mother. "Bring it down and I'll help you cut it up and make it a lovely wedding dress for Angelina." So Louise ran upstairs to the attic and went to the big black trunk. She lifted up the lid and looked inside. There, wrapped in tissue paper, was an old white satin dress of Mother's. Just as Louise was going to lift it out, she heard a loud buzzing noise and looked around to see what it was. "Goodness, it's a big bumblebee," she said. "I've never seen such a big one before. Poor thing, it's got into the attic and now it can't find a way out." The great bee was buzzing up and down by the window pane, and Louise went to look at him. His body was covered with brown and yellow fur, and his wings whirred so quickly that they made the loudest buzzing Louise had ever heard. "Look, get out of the space at the top of the window," said Louise. "That's where you flew in, Bumblebee." But the bee didn't understand. It flew up and down the glass, up and down, frightened and unhappy. It wanted to get out into the garden, where there was sunshine and plenty of flowers, but it couldn't find the way. Louise felt sorry for it. She did not like to touch it, for she was much too afraid that it would sting her, but she couldn't leave it in the attic, buzzing up and down the window all day long. "What can I do for the poor thing?" thought Louise. "Perhaps if I got a piece of paper and put it under the bee, and then guided it up to the top of the window, it would have the sense to fly out." She fetched a piece of paper and then put it gently below the bumblebee. Her hand trembled, for she was really afraid it might sting her, but she didn't draw back, even when the bee buzzed more loudly than ever. She pushed it carefully right to the top of the window, then buzz! The bee flew right out into the garden, and Louise could hear it no longer. It had gone back to the flowers. Then the little girl went to the black trunk and took out the white satin dress she had come to fetch. She carried it downstairs, and soon she and her mother were busy cutting out a lovely wedding dress for Angelina. It was a beauty. They worked hard at it all day long and then dressed the doll in her new frock after tea. She looked simply lovely. "Oh, Mummy, could I take Angelina in her wedding dress with me when I go to tea at Auntie Mary's tomorrow?" asked Louise. "Yes," said Mother. "I'm sure Auntie Mary would like to see her." So the next day, when it was time to start out for her auntie's house, and Louise was washed and dressed in her blue cotton dress, she picked up Angelina and carried her with her. "It's a good thing it had stopped raining," said Mother, "or Angelina might have got wet. The sun is shining now, so you'll be all right. Don't tread in the puddles, darling." Off went Louise, carrying Angelina in her lovely new wedding dress. She was glad the rain had stopped. Just as Louise had gone halfway to her Auntie Mary's house, a big dog came running up, splashing through the puddles. He ran straight to Louise and sniffed at her legs. "Go away," said Louise, holding Angelina out of his reach. "You're treading on my shoes with your muddy paws. Go away." Suddenly the dog jumped up at the doll and tried to snatch it from Louise. His muddy paws left a dirty mark on the doll's new dress, and Louise was very upset. "Oh, do go away," she said to the dog. "Stop jumping up at Angelina." But the dog wouldn't stop. He thought Louise was having a game with him, and he meant to get Angelina and chew her up. Louise was in despair. Whatever could she do to make him stop? There was nobody nearby at all who could help. And the dog jumped higher, and Louise felt certain that he would soon get her doll. Then suddenly there came a loud buzzing sound, and down flew a great big furry bumblebee. He flew straight at the naughty dog and sat on his nose. "Woof!" went the dog in fright, for the bee stung him hard. The bee flew off his nose, circled around Louise's head once, twice, and then flew off again. The dog rubbed his nose with his paw and then, whining loudly, ran off down the road home. Oh, fancy that bee helping me like that, said Louise. Why, it must have been the same one that I helped yesterday. It looked just as big and beautiful, and it had just as loud a buzz. Oh, I am glad I helped it fly out of the attic window. If I hadn't, it might still be there now and wouldn't have been able to save Angelina today. Off she went to her auntie's and told her all about her adventure with the dog and the bee. That kind big bumblebee saved Angelina from being chewed to pieces, said Louise. I'm sure it was the same bee that I helped out of the window. Don't you think so, Auntie? I think it must have been too. Don't you? So it's always good to do a good turn, because you never know when you might need help at some stage. So there we go. That was the great big bumblebee. I enjoyed that. So I will have another look tomorrow and do some sorting out for another story for you. But until then, you sleep well, you be really, really good, and I'll see you tomorrow. So I love you loads. So I love you, Ruby, and I love you, Max, and I love you, Atty, and I love you, Torben. I'll see you tomorrow.